Switch launched back in 2017 in March, which means that the Switch has been around for 4 years now. In its first 9 months, it ended up selling 10 million copies, so it was immediately a hit. It's sort of a hybrid console, so which means that it functions both as a portable device, and when you put it into the dock that it comes with, it also functions as a home console, which means that now you can use it to play on whatever display device you've connected your HDMI to. Before this, Nintendo had a little console called the Wii U. Looking back at it now, the Wii U was a little bit of a failed blueprint of the Switch because the user ended up having to use a tablet-like device in order to play the actual console, which I think was pretty dumb because they should have just made the tablet itself the actual console, which is essentially what the Switch is now. Anyway, when the Switch finally launched, one of the qualms that people had about it was the battery life being a little lacking. When the Switch first released, the battery life was said to last somewhere between 2.5 hours to about 6 hours, depending on how graphically intensive the game you were playing was. This of course was a problem for the players, and that eventually prompted Nintendo to release a new iteration of the same current Switch, but with a better battery, and I think that was in about 2019. This new better battery was said to now last between 4.5 hours to 9 hours. Again, depending on how graphically intensive whatever you were playing was. The newer model had a red box instead of a white box, like the box that you buy the console in. So that was like one of the only ways you could be able to tell which Switch it was. So for new Switch buyers out there, if you're looking to buy like a regular Switch right now, look for the red box model, not the white one, because that's the release Switch and it has worse battery. So do yourself a favor and buy the red box. In that same year, 2019, Nintendo rolled out a new iteration of the Nintendo Switch called the Nintendo Switch Lite. So the Nintendo Switch Lite ended up costing $199, which is $100 less than the actual Switch. And this was because the Nintendo Switch Lite lost the whole hybrid thing, which means that it was only meant to be a portable console. That being said, I usually get questions like, oh, what motivated you to get a Switch? Or why would you do that? Why would you buy a Switch? Is it worth it? Well, I guess that's what we're here to talk about today. I think I should first start off by saying that I'm a Nintendo Wii kid. I grew up with Nintendo Wii. That was the first console that my parents got me, and I was absolutely blown away by the Wii. The charm of Nintendo games ended up really grabbing me, and I thought, wow, I love Nintendo. It just became my thing, And then when I heard about the Nintendo Switch, I thought it was super cool. This whole hybrid concept was super cool. Like, hey, you can play it on the go and you can also play it in your house on the TV. I thought that was so cool. So of course, I really wanted it. I had to have it. I was even more sold on the Nintendo Switch when I saw all the Nintendo Switch exclusives that were on the system. So I had to have the system and I had to play these games. So I ended up getting my Nintendo Switch early January of 2020. And the first game that I got with it was Fire Emblem Three Houses. I really wanted Breath of the Wild, but I couldn't find it for cheap. So I got Fire Emblem because it was like the next best thing. Needless to say though, I was enjoying my new system and I was enjoying my new game, The Nintendo Switch ended up exceeding most of the expectations that I had for it. So out of the box, the Switch comes with the system itself, which looks like a really thick tablet, the Joy-Con controllers that slide into the little spaces on the sides of the system when being used in handheld mode, and the dock that's used to dock your system to the TV, an HDMI cable, which is for the dock, the power adapter for the system to charge it and or to connect it to the dock, the Joy-Con grip, which holds the Joy-Con together so that they feel like a controller of sorts, and the Joy-Con straps that you attach to the individual Joy-Cons to secure them to your wrist and or to make it easier to press the shoulder buttons when using the Joy-Con controllers as single controllers. I was honestly really fascinated by the dock that came with the system because it's a very interesting piece of technology. In order for it to actually work properly, you need to connect your power adapter to it and also HDMI cable to it, as well as your TV or your monitor or whatever your display device will be. So when you put your Nintendo Switch into the dock, it transmits whatever image is on your dock onto your TV via the HDMI cable. And also, because of the chip that's included in the dock, it upscales the images on your dock from the 720p that it's usually locked at, and then on your TV it's upscaled to 1080p. And I thought that was super cool. A lot of people have groaned about the graphical capabilities of the Switch, but really it's a Nintendo console. If you are buying a Nintendo console because you're looking for 4K, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. It's Nintendo. If anything, I think this 720p resolution in handheld mode does work well for a lot of games, because a lot of games do end up benefiting from that kind of resolution. So the Joy-Con controllers have motion sensors in them that allow you to use motion controls in supported games. These little controllers also have some pretty good haptic feedback in them, which Nintendo is calling HD Rumble. So the HD Rumble is said to be so good that the Joy-Con could recreate the feeling of ice cubes being dropped into a cup, and if you shook it, you'd be able to feel how many ice cubes are in the cup. In the demo for the Joy-Cons, they also demonstrated water being poured into the virtual cup, and they were saying that you would be able to feel the sensation of that water being poured into the cup. And I thought this was super cool. I was really impressed by the haptic feedback that they had, because Nintendo has never really had anything like this in any of their controllers. So the right Joy-Con comes with a motion IR camera that would be able to sense the shape, the distance, and the motion of whatever you put in front of it, which is also super cool. Nintendo is so proud of this technology of theirs that they released essentially what I like to call a glorified $50 demo called OLED Switch, which is basically a set of mini games that you would end up playing that would demonstrate the capabilities of the technology contained inside the Joy-Con. I mean, I thought this was pretty cool, but the least they could have done is make it free, maybe? Because if we look at Astro's Playroom of PlayStation 5, that's a free little demo thingy that basically exists to show off, the new technology in the new DualSense. So I really think Nintendo should have made this free. Another handy feature of the Joy-Con is that once you turn them sideways, they now function as two individual controllers. So right out of the box, you already have two controllers. I think this is pretty handy because if you have people that you want to play with, then like immediately you get your Switch or whatever, you already have two controllers. You can already jump in and start playing multiplayer games, and I thought that was super cool. Some people have complained about the size of the Joy-Con. I haven't really experienced any issues with this. I mean, my hands aren't that big, or so I've been told. I don't know. These are my hands. And the Joy-Con fit pretty well in my hand, even when I'm using the sideways controls as like one Joy-Con as one controller. It doesn't really irk me, but if you have really huge hands, you might get a little bit uncomfortable. But there's always the option to buy what Nintendo calls the Pro controller, which is essentially just another controller that you can buy to use on your Switch. That costs another $70 or so. If you have the money and if your hands are too huge to fit these little guys, then you might as well go ahead and invest in a Pro controller. As long as your dock is connected properly, switching from the TV mode to the handheld mode is pretty easy. All you have to do is detach the Joy-Con from the little Switch grip, if you are using the Switch grip, and pick up your Switch tablet from the dock, put your Joy-Con into the side, and you can keep playing right there. It's also just as easy vice versa. Switching from handheld to the dock mode, all you have to do is take the Switch Joy-Cons off the tablet, place the little tablet into the dock, give it a few seconds, like maybe 2, like it's a very short time, and whatever you are seeing on the tablet will now be displayed on your TV. No hassle. It's really easy. The Nintendo Switch also features what's called a kickstand at the back of the system. So the kickstand allows for you to place the Switch upright on a table or any other flat surface and use it just like that. And that's what Nintendo calls tabletop mode. Personally, I don't use tabletop mode too much, but my brothers do use it when I'm hogging the TV and they need to play Smash Brothers or something, and they just like plop it on the table and they just keep playing. So I guess it's pretty handy in that way, but I personally don't think it's that handy. The qualm that I have about the kickstand is that it's pretty poor quality. Like any little bit of pressure on your Switch will force the kickstand to snap off, and also your Switch easily does fall over on the kickstand, like even though it's meant to help prop it up, but it's really flimsy. But luckily, Nintendo made it in such a way that it's like they knew it was gonna snap off. It's pretty easy to put back. All you have to do is kind of place it back in the little crevice that it came from and just apply some pressure and it will snap right back in. So this kickstand also acts as a little covering for the SD card slot. So with the Switch, an SD card is sort of an essential because when you get it, it comes only with about 32 gigabytes of storage, and some of that is going to be taken up by system files, so you're gonna have less space than that. Getting an SD card is gonna be an essential for you, especially if you see yourself going towards the digital route in terms of your games, because for example, like Breath of the Wild, which is one of my favorite games, is about 14 GB on its own. So that's already most of your space gone. So unless you intend to have 1 or 2 games at a time on your Switch, I will highly recommend for you to get at least a 32 gigabyte memory card, SD card thing. Otherwise, you're gonna end up having to download and delete your games, and that could be even more costly than just investing in an actual SD card. In terms of games, I would like to put it out there that the Switch is basically an indie machine. So if you're really into indie games, the Switch will definitely be for you, because you can find tons of hit indie games on here like Celeste and Hollow Knight and Cuphead and lots of other indies. Other than that, the Switch also has tons of garbage on it, because lots of the times I end up scrolling through the Nintendo eShop and I'm wondering, like, how the heck did this game get by? Like, how would Nintendo allow this onto their system? There's a lot of bad games on there, and funnily enough, they're not free. So you might find yourself paying for a game and thinking that it might be good and then ending up being really disappointed. So I'd really advise you to do your research before you buy games on the Switch, because there are weird games all over there. I mean, just recently they added a game called Calculator. It's $10. It's essentially just a calculator app. Why would you need that on your Switch? Why would Nintendo approve this? I have so many questions. Please don't buy the calculator game. Please buy better games. Garbage games aside though, Nintendo's own first-party games are actually really top tier. Games like Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild are great examples. Actually, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild actually ended up winning Game of the Year in the year of its release, which was 2017. And even now, in 2021, people are still discovering new little details about the game. It's also still one of the best games on the Switch, so if you ever do get a Switch and you like adventure, open world type games, I will recommend Breath of the Wild to you. The Switch, like every other console, also features an online subscription service. $4 gets you a month, $8 gets you 3 months, and $20 gets you a whole year. And it also features a family membership, which is available for $35. And I think you can add up to 5 family members onto that one subscription, which is pretty cool. This, of course, allows you to play supported games online, but it also gives you access to Nintendo's retro library of games, which currently includes NES games, SNES games, and just recently they announced the addition of N64 games and Sega Genesis games. If you're like me and have been itching to play some of these great retro games and don't have some sort of portable emulator, then I think it's pretty great because it's already included with your online subscription. So one of the main draws of the Nintendo Switch, of course, is the whole hybrid functionality. You know, it's pretty cool that you can play it on your TV and you can also take it wherever you want to go. And another selling point for the Switch, I think, is just to be able to play Nintendo games. Sure, you could emulate them on your $5,000, $50,000 PC. Don't let the Nintendo police hear you. Please hide. But in my opinion, nothing really beats the feeling of being able to play a game on the hardware it was originally intended to be played on. That's just me. You know, a lot of people do end up seeing the Switch as, oh, a little side console to complement whatever home consoles you already have. But I think the Switch is also a console in its own right, you know, it can hold its own. And I think the Switch is a worthwhile investment, you know, even 4 years after its release, because Nintendo games are awesome and the Switch is a cool and convenient little thing. And if you ever do have the cash to buy one, please do. You absolutely won't regret it. I think I should also put it out there that there is a new iteration of the Nintendo Switch that just recently launched, which is called the OLED Switch. So basically the OLED is a Switch, but with a better screen, I guess. It doesn't use the LCD screen that the previous one had. The OLED screen looks much better and it's wider. Because you can see, like, with the actual Switch, there's this weird dark bezel around it, and I don't know, it just looks kind of off. So on the OLED, the bezel is a little bit smaller. There's also like tons of other, well, not tons, there's like a bunch of other quality of life improvements on the OLED, like better kickstand and other things. But the OLED costs $50 more than an original Switch. But if you're a first-time Switch buyer, if you're trying to buy a Switch, I would advise you to buy the OLED, because even though it's $50 more than the original Switch, it's technically better looking. So if you can, just tough it out, save up those extra $50 and just go ahead and buy it. But otherwise, if you're like already a Switch owner, like, you know, like me, I wouldn't really advise you to go ahead and buy the OLED unless you have like $350 burning a hole in your pocket and you desperately need to spend it. Actually, you know what? If you have that much money burning a hole in your pocket, please send it to me. Anyway, what do you guys think? Is the Switch still worth it in 2021? Do you plan on getting a Switch anytime soon? If you have a Switch, which version do you have? Leave it in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video with a friend. This has been Molly-chan, as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video.